Did you know that when Carl Jung spoke of extroverted thinking, he meant something radically different than what the MBTI meant? When he wrote about extroverted thinking, he wrote about somebody who formulated some kind of framework or system to understand what is rational and what is irrational. The extroverted thinking type was somebody who was able to conjure up some kind of system to evaluate what was objectively the smart decision in every situation. This was Carl Jung's theory, and this is somewhat an interesting way to look at something that is supposedly extroverted. In the MBTI, the difference is clear when you notice that Dario Nardi and Linda Behrens and other theorists argue instead that extroverted thinking is a process of following and understanding the logic of every situation. These people came up with a different idea of seeing extroverted thinking, in which extroverted thinking was simply acting according to what was rational in every situation. This more extroverted emphasis on extroverted thinking is a little different from Carl Jung's. Carl Jung's opinion on this was that thinking was not to be understood as extroverted or introverted in the same sense that intuition was extroverted or introverted. Carl Jung's idea instead was that because thinking and feeling were rational processes, the way extroversion and introversion manifested in these functions became something different. If you looked at extroverted thinking, his emphasis was that these extroverted thinkers were thinkers that sought to control and structure the situation. And this requires the person to come up with their own personal framework, their own structure of how they want the situation to pass. The MBTI version instead argues that you should look at what the situation determines to be objectively good or bad. If the situation, if the environment rewards this or that, extroverted thinkers are the people that will simply act according to this rational idea, no matter how irrational it might be. I see extroverted thinkers more like Carl Jung as people that have set ideals for what should be rational and what should be irrational. For example, take the issue of environmentalism. I know a lot of environmentalists that are extroverted thinking types. And from Carl Jung's perspective, these people are people that have very strong ideas about what should be rational. We should believe in climate change, blah, blah, blah. And they are acting this idea out. And they are trying to enforce it in the situation. Extroverted thinkers are using thinking and feeling. Thinking and feeling is used to control and influence the situation. It's not about information intake or output, as it is with intuition and sensing, but it's about control. And just as these extroverted thinkers are fighting to make sure that it's rational to not pump oil and to take care of the environment, of course there will be other thinkers that argue that of course climate change is a scam and there is no such thing. This is just an example of the fact that thinkers are going to have opposing perspectives on what is rational depending on their subjective viewpoint, depending on their idea of what is rational and what is irrational. And you'll find that these thinking extroverts are going to argue a lot with each other about these issues, which they are going to argue about which way is the best to structure an environment or situation. So which definition are you the most big fan of? Do you prefer the Linda Behrens, Dario Nardi version of extroverted thinking, or do you prefer how Carl Jung saw it?